This presentation recounts the errors and misinterpretations that led to Australia's most well-known trial. It discusses the significant evidence presented during the trial, how it was handled and the impact that it had on the case. The story began when 9-week-old Lindy Chamberlain disappeared from her family's tent during a camping trip to Uluru. Her mother's cries were heard by many, my God, that dingo's got my baby." As the story became public knowledge around the nation, people began to question, did a dingo really take her, or was this just a story to cover up a murder? After the first inquest ruling that a dingo had taken Azaria, the family were allowed to grieve for 1 year before being ripped apart by rumours, accusations and a second inquest, which led to Lindy Chamberlain being committed to trial for murdering her daughter. We will now look at the evidence presented during the trial and how the justice system failed the Chamberlains. A tourist named Mr. Goodwin found Azaria's clothing 1 week after her disappearance. Mr. Goodwin stated that when the first officer arrived on the scene, he immediately picked up the jumpsuit and pulled the singlet and booties out of it. Afterwards, he put the items back together and tried to place them back on the ground as he had found them. The photographs shown to the jury in court were taken after the police officer had handled the clothing. However, the jury were not made aware of this. Conflicting statements about how the clothing was found, such as folded in a neat pile or scattered, led to the rumours of human interference. This worked well for the prosecution, as they suggested that the Chamberlains had planted them to support their theory about the dingo. The fact that the clothing was still in one piece when found also made a lot of people doubt the dingo story. Analysis performed on the jumpsuit included blood pattern analysis, tests for the presence of canine saliva, and an investigation into what caused the tears. Professor James Cameron was responsible for the majority of misleading information provided about the jumpsuit. His first assumption was that the blood pattern around the collar of the jumpsuit could only have been caused by either a slit throat or decapitation. He stated that it could not possibly have been caused by a dog attack, despite his lack of experience in anything canine related. This statement was one of the key factors during the second inquest that led to the Chamberlains being committed to trial. The second of Professor Cameron's bias allegations was that when illuminated with a UV lamp, a bloody handprint was visible on the back of the baby's jumpsuit. However, after the trial, when the evidence was put under scrutiny, it was found that the marks on the back of the jumpsuit were not even made from blood, but from iron oxide, which is more commonly known as red dust and is everywhere at Uluru. This indicates that no confirmatory testing was performed on the jumpsuit to confirm the presence of blood. Instead, one man's opinion was conveyed as fact. Saliva analysis performed on the jumpsuit was carried out by Dr. Scott, who correctly reported his results, stating no saliva had been found on the pieces tested. However, this did not mean that no saliva was elsewhere on the jumpsuit. Unfortunately for the Chamberlains, this evidence was conveyed to the jury through Professor Cameron, whose report stated, "I rely entirely on Dr. Scott's evidence in that there was no saliva present." This misinterpretation of the original results also influenced his opinion that a dingo could not have taken Azaria. The final piece of condemning evidence regarding the clothing was the analysis of how the tears in the fabric had been made. The central image on this slide is the damage that was present on Azaria's jumpsuit. The prosecution conducted one experiment involving a dingo at Adelaide Zoo, in which the dingo was given the same type of fabric as the jumpsuit, and the resulting tears analysed. They decided that a dingo could not have possibly caused the tears, as they saw no similarity. Instead, they cut a piece of fabric with scissors, as shown on the left of this slide, and claimed that this type of cut was a match. After the trial's conclusion, more experiments were conducted with dingoes to see the different types of tears they would create. This is when the image on the right side of the slide was created. Looking at the images side by side now, it is quite obvious that the dingo-ripped fabric is much more similar to the tears in Azaria's jumpsuit than those of the scissors. However, as the dingo experiments were only conducted after the trial, the jury was led to believe that the rips must have been caused by scissors.
On the night of Azaria's disappearance, officers looked inside the Chamberlain's car and did not report any blood. However, months later, when evidence was collected from the Chamberlain's home for the second inquest, presumptive tests for blood led to the statement that the car was awash with blood. This statement made it to the media and was used to convince the nation of Lindy's guilt. The only type of test performed on the Chamberlain's car was an orthotolidine test, which is known as a presumptive test. This type of test indicates that blood may be present and that further testing is required to confirm its presence. However, for some reason, these tests were used as proof that blood was present and no further tests were performed. Orthotolidine is not specific for blood and is known to also test positive to substances such as iron, copper, and some plant matter. It was later found that the positive tests in the Chamberlain's car were reacting to nasal secretions, copper dust, milkshakes, and sound deadener. If confirmatory testing had been performed, the most damning piece of evidence in the trial would not have existed, which was fetal hemoglobin found in the blood under the dashboard of the car. Joy Cole, a forensic biologist, was responsible for testing the blood samples for the presence of fetal hemoglobin. Her laboratory didn't seem to mind that she did not possess the qualifications, nor was she adequately supervised to perform these tests. Joy Cole was calm and collected as she gave her testimony in court and confidently explained how her tests were conclusive for the presence of fetal hemoglobin. She was not able to provide evidence of this, however, as the original samples and tests had all been destroyed as per the lab's protocols. Instead, she presented example images of positive and negative reactions. When another expert, Professor Borcher, took the stand, he explained to the jury how Joy Cole's experiment was practically useless, as the anti-serum used reacts positively to a number of other substances, including adult hemoglobin. Despite Professor Borcher's claims, the jury members found his testimony too scientific and were not able to understand his explanation. Because of this, they believed Joy Cole's testimony instead. Years after the trial, it was found that the sample tested wasn't even blood. It was a sound deadener sprayed on by the manufacturer of the car. One simple confirmatory test performed at the time could have prevented this case from even going to trial. Unfortunately, however, the trial did occur, and Lindy was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. Her husband Michael was charged as an accessory and given a suspended sentence. 5 years after Azaria's disappearance and 4 years after Lindy's conviction, Azaria's matinee jacket was found at the base of Uluru. Lindy had always maintained that Azaria had been wearing it when she disappeared. After it was found, Lindy's version of events started to gain credibility and reasonable doubt in the prosecution's story appeared. The jacket could have provided a barrier between the dingo and the jumpsuit, which could have explained why no saliva was present. It also would have made placing a bloody hand on the back of the jumpsuit impossible. This led to Lindy's release and allowed the truth about how the justice system failed the Chamberlains to become part of Australian history. Despite her exoneration, not all public opinion about the Chamberlain family has been swayed.
This presentation was voiced by Hope Whittle and Shannon Thomson.